Fitzy here, back at it again with another one. Crustys Back. For you guys that are new to the channel and don't know about this car, it's a 78 Toyota Corolla. I call it Crusty because it was a rusty car. I have done a bunch of welding on this car already. It was a pretty rough car. If you want to go back through my archives, you'll find the full story on the entire car, where it come from, how it started, and how far I've got. I haven't touched it in about 6 months. I got it back out again now. Winter's here, so I'm trying to get a pile of work done on this car as well. So all summer I've been thinking about the front end, the chassis, and where the motor would fit in this car. So we're going to go over all that here now and figure all that out. Stick around. Okay, look what's back. Crusty. If you're new to the channel, this is Project Crusty. This is a V8 Toyota Corolla that I'm building. It's a 1978 Toyota Corolla, two-door. She's extremely rusty. I've been slowly rebuilding panels. I have a playlist on this car going through all the replacement and everything. And so far I got the 2 quarters done, the whole back end of the car is done, 1 rocker's done. I haven't touched this car since the late spring. I had a bunch of work to do, and now I basically got to pull back out again. So if you want to go check it out and get caught up on it, just go look up Project Crusty, and you'll find all kinds of information, even where I started the build, where I stripped the car and stretched the quarter panels, made this entire rear section, made all this in here. There's videos on all that, so if you want to check it out, get caught up on it. I'm getting back at it now. So the last video I done on this was down here. I done the rocker panels and everything on it. I got to go do the other side yet. I've been thinking about this car all summer, making plans for it and whatnot. I want to get back at it now and get the rockers and everything done, get a bunch of metal work done on it. There is a lot of metal work to be done on this car. Like, you know, she's crusty for a reason, right? And some people may say, well, Tony, why don't you start with a better car? This is a rust. I do a lot of rust repair on this channel, and what better way to set it, to show it, and to show a rusty car. Like, the doors are mint, look. But like, she got rust up around the front of her here. I'm going to delete these and, you know, that type of stuff. So, you know, for all you guys that are new here, this is old Crusty. But what I'm at here today now is, as you can see, the entire front is chopped off the car. There's no inside to it, nothing. It's 2 sides and a roof. I got it mounted on the platform here that I made just to roll around the garage. The door's still closed nice, so she's structurally sound. I'm thinking about the front suspension, how I'm going to mount it, and the issues I'm going to run into and whatnot. So I went ahead, and what I done is I dug out the front suspension. This is what I got to work with here. What I have here, this is a front suspension out of a mid-70s Pinto, Ford Pinto. Same as Mustang 2, all them types of. This is a factory setup, factory control arms, factory cross member, the whole 9 yards. I'm not getting into buying aftermarket for. I'm a hot rodder. I enjoy reusing parts from other cars, adapting them to it and stuff like that. I always had an enjoyment doing that. So this is the way I'm going to be doing this. But this is the same setup that has continued on for many years, since the 70s when they first came out with these. A lot of the front suspensions that you buy, they call them a Mustang 2 front end. This is what is based off of this setup here, okay? But this is all original. The only thing that was different on this car here is I went and hunted around for parts, and I managed to come across a set of rotors that got 2 bolt patterns, Ford and Chev in it. So I can actually put 5-lug wheels on the front of it, which is a bonus, because this was a 4-lug car. Now, the front end, this is the entire front chassis out of the front of the car, was all cut out of it. And the lower control arms are here, right here. Now, this setup came, you can see this arm here. This arm was bolted on right here and went in underneath here and went into the frame, was held down with a bushing. This used to rock the control arm a small bit, and it didn't let it travel a lot. So it made the ride not the best. I'm not using them. I'm going to make a spherical rod end to go back to the chassis so that there's an adjustment there and it's solid. And basically what it'll do is it'll help let the front suspension go through its range of motion. Now I have all new ball joints up here on the bench. Ball joints, bushings, the whole 9 yards. Got everything here to replace everything new in that front end. I picked it up last year. So I got everything there to make this front end work. It's a rack and pinion steering. I got the Pinto racks. I got a couple of them. Also got Chevette racks. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to run yet. But all this will be changed and different. Used to mount up here and here. This is the bolts that goes through the chassis. And this is where the rack used to bolt on. Now the thing I want to do is when you're building a car, for racing and whatnot, it's nice to be able to take it apart. Now, I built cars in the past where I made them look very pretty and nice, but when it come time to simply take a base pan out of them, they were a nightmare. So my intentions are is that I'm going to set it up when the motor and everything's put in place. I'm going to remove this section here and then frame it out somehow up front to the chassis and everything, so that if I'm in a situation where I got to drop the pan suddenly, for some reason or another to check something out, I haven't got to pull the motor out of the car. Now, what I got to start with here now is I got to remove this here. If you look at, see the way this is mounted? It's just welded onto the original chassis. Now, I don't need none of this chassis rail. I'm going to be running 2x3 square stock steel for the front frame rails, and I want to remove this here. The reason why I'm picking at this here now is because I got to mock this all together. I'm missing a ball joint over here. I'm going to put one of the new ones in. I'm going to mock this all together. I'll take this all apart later on to have it blasted, and so I can paint it all and put it all back together, rebuild it all at the time. But for now, I got to mock this up to find out one particular thing. The track width. The track width on a Pinto is 4 inches wider than what it is on a Toyota. Now, I can widen it out a small bit and whatnot, but the problem I have with track width on some of these cars, I don't want the tire to stick out on the fender. I'll show you all that later. So what I need to do now is I got to take this all up, set this up, set the front suspension, everything up in it, and get it all ready, and basically bolt a set of wheels onto it, mount it underneath the front of the car, bolt the fenders on it, and figure out what I'm going to do with it. One of the issues you got with narrowing the front suspension is rack and pinion. I'll cover all that later because of bump steer and stuff like that. I got to address all that. But for now, let's get this thing stripped apart. So here you got the front end, and you can see how this is where the spring pot mounts. The spring mounts up inside this here, and this is welded to the cross member. The lower control arm bolts on right here, okay? And this is the bolt for the rack and pinion up front, okay? Now the issue I got is that I don't need none of this chassis rail. I don't need this rear pocket section because that's where the original control arm come back through here. I'm going to make all that myself. But I got to clean all this up here, cut all this out of the way here, cut around here, and remove all these two chassis rails out of the way. So all I'm left with is this cross member. That's what I got to do first. Now, a number of you have talked to me about updating my bit of gear and whatnot, and even some of you have offered to buy me one. But I've already went ahead and purchased a plasma cutter. This came up for sale locally online. This is the one that you see on Amazon a lot. It's a Hero Cut 50 DP2. I picked it up used, but it's a 220 unit. It's got the plasma arc on it as well. There's the tip there. Comes with some consumables and whatnot. This is something I haven't used much of one of these over the years. Like everybody else, I went online, I done some research on it, watched a few videos, and taught myself the ins and outs of it. So I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to limb all that stuff off. There's a lot of inner structure inside of it. So it was a bit tricky. It wasn't as easy as cutting it off, but I got it all trimmed off. A little plasma cutter works pretty good. I'm a bit of a rookie at it. Never done it a lot, but I'm making do with it. And, you know, good little machine. But that's it. I got that cut out. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to trim all this up, get this all cut off, and get this ready to set it up so I can bolt it together. Well, I got them all cleaned up, and I got a cut back as far as I can get a cut back. You can see I burnt through in one spot there. No big deal, I'll weld that up after the fact. But I don't want to go cutting any more off of this now with the plasma cutter because I want to save these tabs. Because this is where the 2x3 is going to fit right through here. Because this here is where your up control arm mounts, where your shock mounts, and where your coil spring mounts. It's the upper tower, right? So I got to save all that, so I'm going to cut it off from the inside. These were always trouble to get off the cars because of the structure on them. Well, I got it all cleaned up. I'd say I got a couple hours into this. There's a lot of bits and pieces and stuff that got to be drilled out. How thick this is, no? That's two plates system, and little bits here, and it's never easy. These were never easy to clean apart, but it's worth the effort because you get all these points here and right nice now for mounting everything too, and you got all the geometry right. And, you know, so, you know, a bit of time gone into it, but I'm to where I can now start mocking things up. I'm going to start adding the control arms now and putting the suspension together. I'm going to mock all this up, get the wheels and everything on it, and go from there. So let's get this all mocked up now. Well, there it is. I got it all assembled. Stub axles around, the lower control arm is mounted. I just got temporary bolts in this. I got to buy new bolts for all this stuff, but it's only temporary. The bushings in this are not bad. Same with this here on the top are not bad. Ball joints are presentable looking. I had to put a couple of new ball joints just temporarily in the bottom so I can bolt it all together to get it all fitted. Over here I got it set up. Now, there's no spring in this, right? There's a spring that goes from here up inside this pot that it goes in. I'm not going to put that in it for the simple fact that it's going to be hard to mock everything up. With these cars, I've always found with lower control arms on a car, if you put the lower control arm level, that's roughly where the car will be at ride height, okay? That's a very good close indication of where it would be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a brace that'll bolt down to the shock mounts here and come up and bolt down here. That way when I put this all together, it sets it up on the car. The suspension will be set up at ride height. So that way I haven't got to worry about height and where the wheel's going to be and whatnot. When I put the spring and everything in, it's all going to move up and stuff like this. The front end will end up going like this on you, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up on the bench. I'm going to use the bench as a guideline. I'll lay it flat. And as you can see over here, all I'm going to do is leave the control arm just like it is laid on the bench there. And I'm going to make a mounting unit here that'll go there. That'll make that solid so that won't move. So here's all I got done. I'm using the lower shock mount, and I got a piece of pipe put through there, and another piece of pipe welded on it. And then inside of this pipe, I have a bit of threaded rod with a nut on the top. Now I got it adjustable, so if it's not perfect and I want to get it exact height on both sides, I have adjustability. This is what it looks like, not mounted in the car. It's just scrap steel head kicking around here, nothing fancy. I don't get foolish when I start making brackets and stuff like this that are just temporary to hold this up. I can leave this in this now, and when I build the car, I'll know my ride height, and I can build all the suspension, the height of the car, everything now off of this here. And if I'm not happy with the angles of this here, I can also adjust it to change it if I want to raise it or lower it or whatnot, right? So there's adjustability there now. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to get the other side bolted on and get the two rotors and that on it and get a couple of wheels mounted on it and see if we can get the set up on each front of this. So here it is, I got it all mocked up. I got my I-beam put on the floor, a couple of 2x4s on each just to keep it up off the floor the right height. So the wheels would be, basically the wheels are just there and laid on the floor. I got the wheels that I'm running, the center lines. They're 15x4s. That's the width of them. And what that does, when you put these wheels on the car, it actually widens the track width up on these cars, right? I turn around now, I got it all set up. You can see up here in front now, the way I got the control arm set up. You see how they're level? That would be like ride height. So right there is where she'd be at ride height. So all I need to do now is figure out a few things. Now, I measured up the car. When you're talking about track width, what that is basically from the center of your wheel to your center of your wheel. Now these wheels are different. If you look down, you can see the rotor. This wheel sticks off farther, so I got to take that in consideration. From factory, the Pinto has a 55-inch center line. This here it has almost over 57. So like it's after moving out these wheels an inch more again on the car, which is going to run into an issue. So this is where the problem of running into it I've been trying to figure out. I know for a fact I got to narrow it, but the question I got to find out is how much. So I'm going to take the fenders, now I got the fenders here, I'm going to bolt the fenders on her, on the body, move the body up here and square it up into this here, and just bolt it on so that this here is even on the front of it, and I'll show you what it looks like. So here's what you're up against. Now the car is still sitting way too high, but it's on the frame. All I'm doing is trying to get it straightened up this way. Now if you look at that there, you can actually see that's basically in the center. I can move this back a little small bit. But if you look here, when you look at it, that looks better there now. Like that's got to go up inside of it. Now here's the problem you're running into. See how much that tire sticks out? The other side is the same way. And this is the problem you're running into with running these front ends in a car like this, because it's a narrower car. Now I don't want that look. That's not the look I'm after. I've seen a lot of them now where the cars are set up. Right there, that's about where I would like to have the wheel, okay? Now, having that wheel on this side here, over here, this is what you're up against. This is how much the wheel sticks out. So what I got to do is I got to narrow the track width on the front of the car through here. I'm going to narrow this up, I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to sit down and measure it up now where I want it to be. Measure it across there, and then I'll turn around and give myself an idea that what I'll do is I'll subtract this number that I got here to here, from the outside of the tire to the outside of the tire. And I'll subtract that, and whatever the difference is, that's what I'll cut out of this center section here. Now, by doing this, I'm going to move these two control arms to look closer together. In the past, I've seen people shorten the control arms on these. I want full travel on all these. It's a drag car. I want to have lots of suspension on it. So it's going to be eventually a street car. I want to have a decent ride with it. I don't mind so much moving this in forward. Where I may run into issues, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I may run into issues if I wanted to run a header that goes down underneath the car. But I'm not. I'm running manifolds to go forward. And because it's a turbo car, so it's all going forward, so it's not going to affect it. It's just that this here now is moved in enough to the whole point that when the engine sits in it, it's probably going to basically want to dump down here. But I'll cross that bridge. I was sizing it up earlier, and I'm going to turn around and take a few measurements now and see what we come up with. Well, it seems like I skipped ahead a bit and never got the chance to video it. I went and fit all the front end in it. You know, like I was saying earlier, I was getting ready to take measurements and everything. I started sizing things up, and the biggest problem I got is where the tire sits in the wheel well. It was sitting too high. The body was too high on the frame that I had made. So I ended up taking the frame apart and lowering the frame down. So basically the rocker sits different on the car now. I lowered it about 2.5 inches from where it was on the frame. I got the rocker panel, the lip of the rocker panel down here now is 7.5 inches, which is the same as up here, this front here, from this cross member to the ground is 7.5 inches. Now my floor here, if you look at it, it's I was very meticulous when I had it poured. It's nice and smooth. It might have a small wallow in here, but I'm just guesstimating that that's good enough for me. I just want to get a rough idea of it. It's on 4 casters and it's measurement off the bracket itself, so the body sits there now. I fit the back tire on it. That looks a lot nicer with the back wheel on it like that now, tucked up a small bit, and the tire's tucked a little bit up in the front of it, which is good. I had to do this because I wanted to find out for clearances, because I found some stuff. If you look back here, it seems awful tight back here. Look closely at it. Down here. Now over here I've already done the repairs on it. So I got to have changed that. I don't like the idea of that being so close to that there. And make the best of it. It's an actual sharp edge going right down through there. So I'm going to eliminate all that and cut that off. It's one of the reasons why you mock stuff up, trying to figure things out. But you can see the distance on the tire and the fender. That's nice there now. Of course, I couldn't put this fender on it because the way it's tucked. I got to figure out now my frontal, and I know how much it's got to be there now. And I'm pretty sure it worked out still to be 4 inches, and I'm just going to take 4 inches out of this. But I had to do this just to verify it. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to take this all apart again. I'm going to cut this in half, narrow this up, and take a bunch of measurements so I can know that it's X-braced and whatever. And I'm just going to take 4 inches out of this. So I got it all limbed apart, taken apart, everything taken off it. And I got a clamp to the bench here. I'm going to use the front of the bench, the line up here and here. And I drew a line along here, and I drew a line along in here on the bench, so I got somewhere to locate it to. I took measurements from here to here, and also from here to here. They are parallel. So these four units here are parallel to each other. Then I took an X measurement from the outside corner here to the outside corner here and done the same thing, and them measurements are the same. So I do have 4 points that I can actually take now, and when I go to put this all together, I can make sure that these points are all in the same location, because the problem I'm going to have is moving it together is one thing, but having this so this is not back or forward a little tiny bit. If it's forward or back, these X measurements will be off, so I'll play with it and get it that way. I got it marked out here. I measured in, drew the center, and then measured off a couple of inches and just roughly marked out where it was the 4 inches. As you can see, I got lots of tape. I've after doing this a couple of times, and then I just went back and forth and I measured it with this protractor. That's 4 inches there all the way along, and I made sure that all the way along that's 4 inches. So when I cuts that off there and I cuts that off there, I should be able to butt weld two of them together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this with the marker, and I'm going to cut the marker line off, because I know for a fact that the tape itself, when I start putting heat in it, that's going to peel off. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to mark all this and start chopping it off. Well, there's the section cut out. Full 4 inches. I got it put together here now. It seems like it's opening up on the bottom because it's got a tendency to go like this. And I got them parallel to each other, so what I'll do is I'll weld it across the top here first, and then I'll bring it together on the bottom. I've been taking measurements here. All these measurements here are lining up good. All the X measurements and everything, all that's going good. But you can actually see now how wide it's going to be with the control arms and everything in it. So I'm just going to go ahead and weld this in. Now this really don't have to be fancy, you know what I mean, because I'm cutting this off after the fact out here somewhere, because I just have a control arm and I'm going to cut this off, roll this down around here, because I don't want to have no center underneath the motor. So that way I got room to remove a base pan. But I'm not going to remove that until I get the chassis and everything welded in place and gets cross members and that put in. Then I can cut this out and reinforce this to the frame. But for now, this is just temporary, so I can get these points here in the right locations and my rails in the right location. So I'm going to go ahead now and weld that up. There it is, all welded up. I went and rechecked all my measurements. Across here, they're parallel. Done the X measurements on them, they're the same. So I'm quite happy with that. So I got it narrowed down. There's the piece I cut out of it. Full 4 inches taken out of the center of it. Like I said later on now, I'm not worried about, like, usually I would V this and do a tidier job on the welding, but this is only temporary right now because I'm going to be cutting this off out here, so don't go judging me. But yeah, I got that set up now. Now I can go over and do a last test fit on the front suspension, and then I got to start working on figuring everything out from there, chassis, rails, whatnot. One thing I noticed too is the way this sits in the car, your rails are going to be parallel to this here, okay, coming up here. And the problem with that is this is, if you look at that, that's on a bit of an angle, but that's done like that for a reason. This is the back of the crossmember, by the way. This is tipped back, so the upper ball joint is behind the lower ball joint. That's basically for drivability. If you set this up so your 2x3 is straight here, you'll end up tipping the frame rail like this here. But if you look at it side on, you can see the way that tips, sir. There, right? So the frame rail is going to go basically straight back through here, right? So I'll get this all straightened away and I'll get that all put back together and do a test fit on it. Now I got it all mocked up in place again. The wheel is put on, the fenders are laid on. And this is what it's like. You see the distance on the fender and the tire, fender and the tire. The side here looks good too. So now it's, I'm gonna straighten the wheel a bit. But now I got a nice track width there. You can see the piece I cut out of it, out of the center of it. So that's the first dilemma over with. I'm going to have to play around with possibly laying an engine in this next and figuring out a few things. Well, I've been busy. Got away from this and started doing a lot of thinking about everything, and I figured before it goes any farther, because I had to figure out chassis rails, I figured I'd better mock this up in the engine bay and get everything figured out, see where my issues were going to run into it and problems I got, because I knew when I narrowed up the front end, these control arms were going to cause issues, and they did. I can't run the manifolds. I was going to run backwards manifolds. They actually hit the, whatchamacallit there. My whole plan was to run stock manifolds this way, and as you can see, they don't even come handy. So I got to buy a set of headers for that. up and over headers, which is no big deal. Is either that or make a set of log manifolds. And I'm trying to get away with leaving the stock coils here. And if I made a set of log manifolds coming out, just come straight forward this way, I can still use this here with the factory plug wires, which is probably one option. Or if I goes and runs an up and over header, is I'm going to have to make all new plug wires. And I wanted to use a factory setup, something simple, straightforward. Other issue I had was the alternator. I wanted to mount the alternator low, and in order to do that, where it's located to is located right forward of this here. I was hoping to mount the engine, okay? If you look this here, that there bolt there is the center line of the engine, okay? Or center line of the front end. When you look at it coming in through here, is that bolt there. I was hoping to line that up on number 1 plug, okay, right here. I had to move it ahead the full distance into number 2 plug. It's not bad, still lots of, over half the engine weight is still behind the center of the wheel, which is fine. And I find it opens up a lot of interesting things because the motor's forward now, so there's more room in the firewall inside the car and whatnot. And it moves everything forward out from underneath this cowl, so it's a lot easier to work on stuff up and underneath that then, right? But the alternator fits down low. The chassis rail is going to end right here, and then I'm going to have to come out around it with pipe. My plan is to build all the front of the car and pipe. Is only going to have a chassis rail to the front suspension and then back through the car, and then the front of it will be all pipe. So I'll design that after the fact. Is not an issue. I was concerned about the rack and pinion. I got to find a place to mount that, but my biggest concern was back in here. If you look down through there, I thought that alternator was going to be down lower, but I got lots of room to go in through a shaft down through here. You can see it better here. Here you go. You can see that I can go right on straight down through there now to the rack and pinion, which is not an issue. There's no headers or nothing to deal with. So it'll be just a straight column going straight down to that. A couple of knuckles on that and that'll be fine. Other than that, I think I got everything figured out. I need to find out. I'm putting a cross member across here, but I want to put the cross member right where the roll cage is going to come down. So the cross member, for argument's sake, see this piece here? If that was the cross member there, my main loop would come down and mount right on top of it. Now, I want to have it so that when I sit in the car, the loop is behind me. So when I sit in the car and sits the seat up and stretches my legs out, I'm going to put it there. That's where I'm going to put my cross member to run my 2 to the front. Now, my 2 rails are going to be narrow in the front because of this setup here, which is not bad. Because my plan is over here is after I run my manifolds forward, I'm going to run the header dump for the turbo down through here, going down this way and out underneath the car. That's the plan I got in my head. I got to have it tight to the motor as I can, because when the wheel turns, it'll be able to touch it. So I got to go in tighter in here. But it'll be basically, the rail will be in here, and this will be able to dump down through here, right? And it'll probably like a 3-inch, 4-inch pipe. But when you're building something like this, you're building everything from scratch. There is no game plan. It's very hard to sit down and plan everything out. I planned this out as much as I possibly could. I knew I wanted hood clearance. I didn't want to put no scoops on, so I picked up that. The truck alternator would have stuck out of the hood, so I picked up the lower one. And the water pump, that all moves everything tighter back into the engine. It's not stuck off like a truck one is. Now, I still do have a lot of room up front, because right here is where the rad support bolts on, and the cross member is probably about here. So you're talking about, I still got lots of room for a radiator and the air-to-air condenser for the front there. And then you got your grill and your radiator, or your grill, sorry, and your headlights. So I want to have all that there situated, so there's not an issue. Just that I'm going to have to build all the turbo kit and everything forward of that. And like I was saying, I'm just going to run pipe up to the front of here, because there's going to be another one going up and into the firewall there. But you got to do these things to figure things out. So now that I got this figured out, the next thing I'm going to do is start building 2 chassis rails. So I'm here doing some measurements, looking for some different ones. One of the biggest ones I want is this is the actual frame rail I'm drawing right here, okay? This comes back, I'll kick down, I'll go back through the car this way. The biggest thing I want to have is the kick down. I want to have it where the firewall was. So the firewall, just for argument's sake, this line that I got drawn here for measurement, this will be where the firewall come down and kick down this way here, so the firewall will be made here. But I want a distance between this and the back of the motor so I can actually get wrenches in there, say if I want to change the transmission or whatnot. So what I went and did is I come over here, I got a bolt, a long bolt, see it there? Put in the back of the motor where you'll be putting the transmission in place. And basically what I did is I took a measurement from the front of the chassis where it's going to end here and back to that, and then give myself half an inch. Worked out to be about 19 inches. So that's what I'm going to do with that. So now when you look down through here, you can see the firewall is going to be roughly about right here somewhere, through the middle of this here. I was going to put the firewall way back here, but I don't need to do it as far back as I need to be. So I'm going to run through the middle of this here. I'm eliminating these anyway, but I'm planning on coming up and like not coming right up to the top of this. I'm planning on coming up to here and then bending it forward and taking in this lip here is my idea for this, because what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to save the wiper mechanisms where the wipers are to, and I like to have them in the car. And I don't need these anymore. They're for the heater vents and stuff like that, for fresh air for the heaters. So I'm going to eliminate 2 of them, but I would like to keep 2 of these points here and then be able to put a wiper mechanism on the inside of the car at one point or another if I need to be. So that's why, like, if I had to go right back to here, I would have been into this here, and then what would have happened then is the wipers would have been outside the car, but I want to put them inside, so that's my plan for that there. So now that I got that figured out, I got an idea where the firewall's to. I got to figure out the distance from here to the back of the car so I can get a rough piece made for this here. My whole plan is here now is to start to build the chassis rails. I'm going to build 2 side rails, and then basically I'm going to weld them together, have it all done with a cross member, temporary cross members put in place so I can weld it to the actual front suspension, and so that I can have the front suspension all welded in place to the actual frame itself, and to go from there. I'm not worried about nothing else, roll cages, front ends, and all that type of stuff, because my chassis got to end here in the front, right at this point here. The chassis got to end right here. The reason for that is the alternator. Now I have an idea what I'm going to do. I'm going to box this out here, plate this out, and I'm going to run pipe on the front of the car. Everything out forward of this here is all going to be done with pipe. What I'm going to do now is I got this measurement here figured out. I need to figure out my heights now. Now I went ahead, I got the motor and everything all out of it, and I got this leveled up. I got the level put on it there now, so the cross member itself is level. This section of the cross member here is supposed to be perfectly level on this here. These here are on an angle. I think it's about 2 degrees. I went and measured them up. It's very hard to see, but like they over-exaggerate. Like they don't go straight back. They're kind of like tipped on an angle there. This is my schematics frame rail, piece 2 before. That's the way you would probably expect it to go, but in reality, this is more along the lines of like this here. It's about 2 degrees. It has to come down a small bit on the front side. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the measurement from this point here to the floor. Now my floor is extremely straight and level, okay? I built this floor for a particular reason, doing stuff like this. It's still not 100% for a plane to actual measure off. But I went around and took a bunch of measurements on the car, and I'm pretty close. So now I got that figured out, the height of her there. I took the measurement, and it's 17.5 inches from this point to the floor, okay? Now, inside the car here, it's a little bit different. All I'm doing is taking measurements for top of the rail. Like this, frame rails are going to run back through here, then I'm going to tip down and then run back through here. What I'm doing is over on this side here, okay? I'm going to mount the top of the frame rail right to the upper lip, which is this lip here, okay? So basically what's going to happen, the frame rail is in here, but it's going to be level with this upper section of the frame rail right here. So when I build my floors will come out and mount on top of this here. But by doing this here, mounting the frame rail to the top, I've done this on a couple of race cars. It gives me a lot more room underneath to run exhaust, fuel lines. In the case of this here, I'm putting a transmission cooler with a fan underneath the car, so I want lots of room underneath it to mount it here. Because my exhaust is going to be coming down here and going back through the car on this side here. It'll end up dumping out here underneath, just behind the tire, for like when I'm drag racing. I'll probably just dump like a regular header. And I put no fender exits or nothing on this here. I want this car to look pretty well stock on the outside of the car. I did not customizing and going crack building crazy stuff. So I took a measurement from the top of the frame rail to the floor here. Let's go over here. So these are all the measurements that I got, okay? 12.25 here, 17.5 here, and I got 19 here, which is my overall length of this top one. Now I need to get this kick up here and this length of this one here. I'm going to estimate this. I'm going to have to trim this off. So I'm going to make these two here a little bit longer. It's just I'm going to make these now as I'm going. So that's the next step we're going to go at here now. Now hopefully you're going to be able to see this. Tony's making templates. I've always done it this way. What I'm going to do here now is I have these measurements here. I'm going to put them on the paper. All I'm concerned about is basically from here to here. This section in here. Okay, this is what I got to figure out. I know my lengths from this point to the front and what I'm going to pick from this side to the back. I don't know my angles. I don't know my heights. I don't know how big this piece is going to be and whatnot. So all I'm going to do is use these simple numbers that I got here and draw the actual front frame rail onto this in full scale. So all I'm going to use is the bottom of the cardboard. This is my ground level, okay? This is where I measure my points off. So I'm going to measure off the top frame rail, which is 17.5 inches. I do all this in pen because I want sharp lines. 17.5 inches. And all I'm going to do is just draw that line there. I'll use the actual cardboard to square it up. Make sure that I'm doing it right. There's a number of different ways people do all this stuff. I've always kept things very simple. You know, once you actually physically see things, things start to come together for you then. Now the other over here is 12.25. 12.25. 12.25. I can tell by looking at that now, it's getting pretty close to where it should be. It won't be a very big kick up. I was expecting it to be a big one, but it's not. So now I have the two top points that I have drawn up. Now the steel that I'm using is 3 inches wide, okay? It's a depth of 3 inches. So what I'm going to do is measure down from here, measure off 3 inches on both of these here, make sure it's very precise, and I'm going to draw a line basically right on in through them here again. So I'm going to use I'll go 6. Basically, I'm going to use middle of the tape there, and then go to 3. Six and 3. 6 and 3. Could use the seamstress tape, would be better for this. I'll get a good measurement from this here. 6 and 3. I've built a number of chassis over the years, and I've always found when I put it to full scale, I see things and issues or whatnot that I want that I would have. So now I have 2 3-inch sections built there. So now I need to build my cross section for the chassis rail, which will run down here somehow. Doesn't matter where I put it to, because all the measurements are going to be made off the points of where the corners on that will be. Well, what angle do I want it on? Do I want it on a steep angle? Do I, like, you know, a lot of times I just guesstimate it. That there to me looks presentable looking, okay? That's a nice little kick up. That there might be a bit much. That might be a bit much of a kick up. So I'm going to go back to my original one. Probably there. Yeah, because my floor pan is going to go off of that. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a straight line through all that. Now, got the line drawn through that. Now I'm going to measure off of this 3 inches. It'll be 3 and 6. 3 and 6. So I'll take 2 of them there now and mark them. Now I got that there done. So there's my shape. My frame rail come over there, come down, and go across there. Now I've seen fellas welding chassis together, and I see them putting them basically Let me see. For an example, like I've seen people weld chassis together like that, putting them on angles and button. I never like that, button pieces like that. I like cutting the angles and having so everything fits in there nice. By doing it this way, full scale, I can actually now get my angles in there. So all I'm going to do is join them 2 points there that intersect. Put on my glasses, make sure I got it right. That's one intersection. There's the other intersection. So now I have the upper section figured out, how big my middle section is going to be, and my lower section as well. And this is what my front frame rail will actually look like in the car. And I have these angles. Now I'm going to cut these sections out. And these will be templates because this here is a 2x3 and it's exactly 3 inches wide. Okay, this is what I'm basing it off of. I can use these now, lay them on as a template, lay these on these or mark these off. A lot of fellas gets into protractors and angles and all this type of stuff. I've just done it this way all the time, so I've never had issues with it. It's just a simple way of me to actually make the frame rails and to duplicate them so that they're all the same and I get this nice angle. This is how I usually figure all this stuff out. It's very simple. All I had was this measurement and I had this measurement. That was it. Now I have a full schematics of a chassis reel I'm going to put in the front of this car. I'll build the whole chassis the same way, the back of it, the whole back end of the car. I've always done it this here, full scale. I just use these little Bristol boards. So I'm going to go ahead now and take a razor blade or a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut these pieces out. So I went ahead and I cut that much of it out. So I got that cut out. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these here off. So I got the sections there. And I also marked them 1, 1, 2, 2. So I'll actually know where they actually go together to. Some people might just guesstimate at it or whatnot, but now I have my angle for my top rail. I have my angle for my bottom rail. Now when you flip these over, you will realize that that's the exact same angle. So you can actually use it, but I'm going to use it for this here. And then I got my middle piece. I know how long it is. I know the angles that I've got to cut on because that will actually fit. Oh, that's upside down. Really don't matter, I suppose, because they're both the same. But that will fit there. So now next thing is to go dig out some steel and start cutting up some frames. Okay, this is the steel I'm using. I got a length of it out, taken out here now. This is 2x3 by 1/8 wall, okay? You can get thinner stuff. I didn't want to go with that. I have to order in. This stuff is basically, they got it in stock. I like using this because you can actually drill and tap this. So if you want to put like a fuel line bracket or something on, you can actually drill it and tap it into it and have it so it bolts directly onto the panel. I'll just lay my little template on it there like so. I'll mark that off. I'll mark that off, and then I'll square everything off of that using a square, drawing lines off the other side of it and cut the pieces out that way. Here's all I did. I measured over and marked off 19 inches. That was the overall length. If you remember, on this upper section that we had 19 inches to the top edge of the corner. So this will be the top edge of the bend, and this will kick down from here. So that's 19 inches. So I measured off to there. Then I squared this up on this here, stuck a few magnets on it. As you can see, it's not the right length, but it is, the measurement is there. So I got that there. And all I did is I took a straight edge and laid it on there and scribed it along there with the scribe. And I'm left with a scribe mark. What do you see it there? There you go. And the reason why I do that, markers is I'm not getting an actual as a precise cut. If I got a marker, a scribe line, and I cut it on the edge of the scribe line, I'll have a good line every time. Now, cute little thing with this is, when I cut this first angle, okay, here is my centerpiece here that's on this piece that we cut. I think when I flip this upside down, slide it in there, it lines up with that. So now my next cut, the angles are the same. So I'm not getting no wastage. I'll be cutting this piece off, I'll flip it over, I'll measure off from here to 19 inches, and I'll just cut it off, and then I'll have my 2 top sections. And I'll go from there. All I'm going to do here on the sides is I'm going to take a square and square it off here and scribe it, square it off here and scribe it, and do the same thing. And I'm just going to cut it with a simple zip cut wheel. I've used chop saws, and the problem I have with chop saws is they got a tendency to deflect when they get down into the thing, and I'll just cut one side at a time. each way around. I'll clean it all up after the fact. So I got the piece cut out. Here it is there with the angle and everything on it. So you know what's it called. I run into a little issue here. I couldn't see what I was doing. I went off the line. That's fine. I don't want that so much. But here, let's watch when you put these two together. It fits together real nice there now, see? That's how you make that angle. Now I went over and done a test fit on the car, and I made a boo-boo. I measured to the top right here. I never took consideration this here. So when I put this in place, this frame rail will go here like so. Like this. Here's the problem I run into. I'm not up to that point because I brought up on the brings up on the control arm. So I'm gonna have to adjust everything according to what's happened. Is this top rail now is down lower. It's probably down about that much lower. So what I got to do now is I got to adjust this one here. So this is all I'll do, is I'll come over here and I'll lay this out here and I'll figure out how much I got to cut off it, and I'll just cut that off parallel to that one there so I can get the angle there. Simple little mistake that I made, but it's an easy fix. Once I know what the distance is from here to that top corner that I need to remove from this section here. Now that little boo-boo that I made, I went ahead and made adjustments on my templates, okay? This is the piece. I measured it off. That's where that was too. I measured down and I come up with the number of 5/8 of an inch. So I measured down here and I measured off 5/8 of an inch parallel to when that was on that there, parallel to this bar here. So that was what's called. Then all I did then is I drew a parallel line to here from that point there, which works out to be, I think, about 3/4 of an inch maybe. What is it? Yeah, 3/4 of an inch. That's how much I had to take off the overall length of it. So now then I went and fit it all in place, made sure everything was parallel again and everything. So now I have my center template cut to the right length to take into consideration of the problem that I'm having with the control arm back here. So I'm going to be underneath that there now, and the front of the rail is be lower in the front. There you have it. The 3 pieces for one side cut out. And there you have the other rail. No fancy tools used here. Just basically simple little math. Bit of cardboard, and you can make angles like this here. These are always, people always find these having troubles making these, trying to fit these together, trying to figure out how to make them, to make the nice angle to go through them. But you know, this is simple using a bit of cardboard, and I just used a simple zip cut wheel like I've been using for all my sheet metal. Same thing. You don't need no big fancy chop saws or nothing for it. A lot of guys like using chop saws. You get a nice square edge. I want to bevel all these out anyway and weld them basically with a bevel edge so I can weld right through the inside. And then when it's all said and done, I'll be putting a structural plate on the front of her. I cleaned them all up with 24, never got carried away with it. I'm painting all this with a rust paint anyway, when it's all said and done. But I want to show you this here. This is one here, I never cleaned it up or nothing yet. And you can see the way the edges and everything around that there. This is all I do with them, is after I clean them up, is I bevel the edges back on about a 45-degree angle all the way around. And you can actually see it here when you put 2 of them together. You can see there's no edge there. What I like doing this here with is when you bring these together like so. Now you got a nice spot there where we're actually welding the inside, okay? Because if you look at it, I got this tapered back here to the inside lip, okay? So that's tapered back a full 1/8 of an inch back to the inside lip. So when I start welding this, I'll actually have a good penetration on it, and I'll just weld right on and through there, run my bead in there, and I should get a nice little bead there in through it. So all I'm going to do now is going to go ahead, I'm going to do the same thing with this one. See, I haven't got it done yet. I'm going to clean that one up, and then I'm going to set it up here on the bench, one piece, and I'm going to start setting it up on one end, welding it onto the bench, so it doesn't move on me. And then once I got one rail tack welded in place, I'll start welding so much of the rail, and then I'll lay the other one on top of it and repeat the same process. So here's what I got done. As you can see here, I got the frame rail laid out on the bench here now, and I got it welded to the bench. I set it all up. I just put my first piece in there, put it anywhere at all where I figured it was in a comfortable spot where I can weld it, and I welded that to the bench. Then I put the second piece on and fit that where I wanted to. But anyway, I got that straightened away and that welded on. Then I went and welded this one on. And how I made this one parallel to this one, as you can see, I took the other rail and I clamped it up on one end up here, and then I hauled it in tight there, and then I used measurements off of this here and down here, and measured 2 of these here and made sure that both of these measurements were the same, that would tell me that this and this is parallel. And then I went ahead and I welded that to the table. So now what I'm going to do, let this go. As you can see, now the way is all welded to the bench. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start tack welding these on, put a tack here, tack here, tack here, tack here, tack it all the way around. It's best to do this on a bench, solid, welded down to something. If you fool around trying to do this, just laying it on a table, this stuff pulls really bad, okay? So when I tries to weld this corner here, that's going to pull up, okay? And when I weld this down here, it's going to want to pull down. When it's all welded to the table, it will hold its shape, okay? So when I'm finished welding this and I cut this from the table, it's going to stay the shape that I left it. As long as don't go cutting it from the table when it's still hot. Just let it cool down naturally. And when it's down and everything feels the same, it's all good, then you can let it go. Because she'll relax herself back to her original setup. So once I get this here tack welded on, I'll weld the 2 sides here on both ends of it. And then all I got left to do then, what I'll do then is I'll make sure this is nice and flat. Then I'll start piecing together the next rail on top of that. Oh, jeez. Look what I run into. Never took that into consideration. Oh. Now it'll fit. I end up letting it all go again, moving it all down the bench. You're looking at it and thinking, well, Tony, why didn't you just haul it out from the wall, the bench? You haven't seen this bench, just everything underneath this bench. I had to move everything underneath the bottom of it. I had to run over, get the jack, to pull that out an inch. By the time I had all that moved out and done, I'd have this done. So anyway, I got it all welded on again, fitted, squared up. Everything's done to it, that had to be done to it. And so when I put the second piece on, after you fools it up the first time, this is all I'll do, and I'll weld that to that. I'll square that up to that. I'll do one section at a time and do the same thing again, and I'll weld it. Then when I get this here welded, and so much, I'll weld this side here. I'll break this from the table, leave 2 of these welded together, flip it over and weld the other side. So all I'll be left was this inside edge to weld on both of these. So I went ahead, I fit that one on top of it, I squared it up with the square, and then welded it in place. Welded on the other side temporarily. Then I fit this piece on, lined it up, squared it up with the other one, and then welded that in place, and did the same thing with that one. So now, both rails are all one. I got them welded together. I'm gonna go ahead now, tack weld the 4 corners here, and start welding these up here, and I'll weld across top here. Once I get that done, I'll let that cool down for a bit, and then I'll cut it off the table and flip it over and weld the other side. I'm getting lots of penetration. I got no troubles with that. But amazingly enough, I'm actually blowing through the 1.8. That's how hard I had the machine. And if you look at the machine here, it actually says down here 1.8. Okay, I put it down on that and I was blowing holes. I'm right up here now. I'm at voltage, trying to get this here not to blow through, and I got my settings at 70. And it's I'm amazed with it, right? So you can't really go according to what they says, because you can see I'm getting good penetration there. That's still warm, Tony. Stop it. So I'm gonna let this cool off a bit now, and then I'm gonna break it clear from the table, and then flip it over and weld up this side on the other side. Here I got them all welded up, all welded on the sides, and it's, all I got left to do now is the inside here. I've been letting it cool down. Broke it clear from the bench, cleaned up all what was welded on the edges, cleaned up the top of the bench again so I can move it around. So I got it all straightened away there now. I'm just going to let that cool off a bit, still a bit warm there, and then I'm going to split this in half, and then I'm going to weld up each individual rail on the inside, and then I'll have 2 front rails made. And I also went ahead then and I dressed the ends. I squared them up, so both these ends now are the same length, and they're nice and square. Same with the other end as well. So I can use them as the measurement, right? So they're all squared off. And so I'll just get that all cut apart and welded up now. And there you have it, 2 frame rails. All welded up. I got it all, the edges and everything where I had to weld them together, all cleaned off on them. I'm pretty pleased with them. They stayed nice and parallel. You can see we're separating them all there now, right? Separate the 2 rails. Pleased with that. So here I have it in place with a quick mock-up. I just clamped it in. Still got to go back about 3/4 of an inch here, but I just used the tabs here to hold it in place. You can actually see now how it all fits in there. I still got to lower it down a small bit because I was noticing before it's rubbing on that there control arm, but that's just because the 2x4s there hold it up, so I got to drop a small bit. But I just want to fit it in there to size everything up. You can see the way it comes back through the car. But what way this will work now is this will have an outrigger coming from here to come out, and then back here there'll be another one coming out to here, and both sides, and there'll probably be something joining up in the middle. There'll be a cross member up here somewhere, but the relief springs never got to be taken into effect yet, and you got a drive shaft to go back through there. But that's basically the way that'll work. And that'll be a point for a roll cage, point for a roll cage, point for a roll cage, point for a roll cage. And probably what I'll end up doing between these riggers then, that goes up this way, I'll end up running the pipe right tight to that rocker in between the 2 of them, just for impact purposes, just in case. So that'll frame up the bottom side of the car, so the entire perimeter, the inside is solid. Because if you took a smack on the rocker here, you'll go into the bar here, but the bottom can still come in. So I'll put a reinforcement pipe along this side here as well. But I'm pretty pleased with that. Right. Looking down through there, that there will be the back of the firewall. That's where that'll come up through that there. And I've been sizing up a few things. I'm thinking about cutting this section out of this first and boxing this in for the base pan. I might do that before I even join it to this. So I got the 2 frame rails made. I got the cross member narrowed. That's a big accomplishment. Now I can think about everything else that works around that. Take it one step at a time. One thing I find is when you're at this stuff is you need to go so far to actually start thinking about the process of where you're going, because this is not a kit I'm putting together. This is something I'm building from scratch. So you're going to run into snarls every now and again, and you got to cross that bridge when it comes to it. So I got it this far here now. I know I had a lot of these questions around my mind all winter, and now I got them all answered. So I'm quite pleased with everything and how it's turning out. It's coming along really nice. But I'm going to leave this one here. And next one now I'll get into either I'll continue on with this here, or I'll probably get back to the rocker. I'm not quite sure yet, but I had to get at this. This has been bothering me all summer, just thinking about it, wanting to figure out the front suspension in it, because this is where I want to start everything off to. But anyway, that's it for this one. Hope the tips were good, and until next time. That's it for this one. Hope the tips were good, and until next time. Oh, you had to drop in right at the end of it when I'm doing the thing, don't you? Yes? Oh, you got some timing. You know when I'm doing videos. Me of it. In for an inspection? Me too. You got my prospect here. What do you think of it? Huh? Peanut. Peanut. Yep.